I love the new album. I've already played it on the show, so I'm
Oh, cool.
looking forward to delving into that and kind of your career in music. So first and
Okay.
foremost, I appreciate you taking a minute out,
My
and
pleasure.
we're hitting the 5 year anniversary of the pandemic, which I
Right.
know wiped so many things out for
Oh my
musicians.
God. Yeah.
Talk to me about surviving that time period and how it's reverberated, the waves that still exist today, and what you're doing.
Okay. Well, first of all, my career is as a music copyist.
Yeah,
Okay, which may be an unusual path to putting out an album, but we can talk about that in a minute. But
sure.
my 30 plus year career is writing out parts that the musicians play. Take a score, we extract out the parts, pass them out to the players. If we do our job right, things go smooth and you know. My main business is Broadway shows and Radio City Christmas. Those are my biggest clients.
Okay.
And one day it's like boom, we're shut down. And we didn't know if it was going to be for a month, 2 months. They say, okay, we'll be back in 3 months, and then we'll be back in 3 more months. And then meantime, I have a business with a partner, and we had office space in Midtown that we were basically paying for to be a storage locker.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult financially. It was, very difficult for me. And the band had just gotten its legs. We had had our first concert in November of 2019, and we were supposed to have one in April 2020, playing at the Musicians Union for the Emergency Relief Fund benefits, and to give benefits to the Emergency Relief Fund. Anyway, that got shut down, and I probably had 20 charts at that time written for the band. Okay. And while I was working, I could maybe do an arrangement a month. All of a sudden, what do I do? And my bass player, Steve Count, called me up. He goes, "Hey, man, people are starting to make those remote videos. Maybe we could do that." So we produced 5 of them over the course of being sequestered.
Yeah.
And that kept the band going. It kept me going, kept me sane. And I was able to pretty much write an arrangement a week at the kitchen table with a pencil and paper and an eraser.
Wow.
So I got very prolific. Um, Now I think I just finished arrangement number 82, but I probably did about 30 of them, 30 or 40 arrangements during the course of the shutdown. And some of them I'll never hear them. It was
Yeah.
just something to do that day, but some of them worked really well. In fact, on what is of the 11 charts, 3 of them were written before the pandemic, 5 were written during the pandemic, and 3 were written after the pandemic. So, um, it was I made good use of the time, but it was very, very stressful and anxiety ridden.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about the album with the Hippie Big Band. How
Okay.
did this idea come about, and how do you feel about it?
Well, I'm really proud of it. We're getting like great reviews. Not that we did it just for the reviews, but we're getting really great reviews. I'm getting more radio play than I would have expected.
Yeah.
And it's very, out of 11 tracks, I'm aware that 9 different tracks have had airplay,
Yeah.
which may be unusual. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, the project started. I mean, I've spent 30 years basically taking care of other people's music.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining because it's been a really good career and I'm still doing it. Um, and in the course of that career, I've rubbed elbows with some of the best musicians in New York. Jazz musicians, studio musicians, uh, Broadway pit players, and they kind of intersect anyway these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm proud to say that I feel that they consider me their peer. They play and I copy music and write. And I have a master's degree in jazz composition from Manhattan School of Music, but it's been hard to like really write while I'm being a music copyist all the time.
Yeah.
It's hard to, do that. And I'd written some things over the years, but inconsistently. I'd have like a little streak where I'd write and then not write and then a streak. So about 6 years ago, a couple of my friends said, "Dude, when are you going to start writing again? Write some things and we'll come play it." So I wrote 9 arrangements, called then it was for 10 players. I added the mallet percussion player later. Um, that's become an important fabric of the sound, actually. But I called 10 of my friends. We read 9 charts, and I had no expectations. It's like, let's just hear what this is. And, it was like Freddie's Dead and Dixie Chicken and a Grateful Dead tune and a Led Zeppelin tune and a couple Weather Report tunes. And at the end of the rehearsal, all 10 people came up to me separately and said, if this is going to be a thing, I want to do it. You should do it. You should keep this going. This should be a thing. So I rehearsed once a month. I kept writing charts and writing charts. And the second rehearsal, I had my drummer is Scott Newman. I know you've had him on your podcast, right? With Spin Cycle, right?
Yeah.
Scott's wonderful, but he couldn't make the second rehearsal. And my midlife crisis, and I was a trombone player and tuba player, bass trombone player. And my midlife crisis instrument was electric bass. So I learned electric bass. I got in a Grateful Dead cover band. My son was 4 at the time, and he said, "Dad, do we have to listen to this hippie music all the time?" Right. So I'm like, okay, dude, we'll listen to some anyway. So fast forward to the second rehearsal, and the drummer, he's playing, what I wrote. And he goes, "This is a lot of fun. This is like hippie music for big band." And I put the two and two together. I said, okay, that's the name of the band. And that's kind of the concept that I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna take rock tunes of a certain type, but not limit it to that really, and present them through a jazz lens. And that's what I've been trying to do. And we made a few adjustments. It was electric bass at the beginning. And after the pandemic, we switched it, same player, we switched it to upright bass, and that kind of help gel things through that jazz lens.
Yeah.
And he wants me to tell everybody that when we do What Is Hip, which is in the key of E, which is a nice friendly bass key, that we're doing it in E flat and he's playing it on an upright bass.
Yeah.
So you bass players out there will get that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's very proud of that, and I'm very proud of him for doing that. Um, so that's how the band kind of originated.
Yeah. So real quick on the E flat part, and I'm not a musician. I don't,
Mhm,
my brain doesn't think that way.
mhm,
I'm more of a visceral music lover.
mhm.
I watched a show the other night, and it was a mother-daughter duo here in Kansas City, and they were
Mhm.
playing at the end of the show C Jam Blues, and he said, "I don't have charts for the band," and it was the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra. So there was like 15, 16 people, and I
Yeah,
feel him looking around, and he was like, "We're doing C Jam Blues, and we're doing it in E flat." And I look at the trumpet guys, and all of them are looking at each other. So I
yeah.
don't know what that meant, but
Well,
they were plunged into a level of like, "Oh my God."
well, they probably all have played C Jam Blues in the key of C for their
Okay.
whole
Right.
life. So
Right.
all of a sudden, they had to do math.
And the dude that was the piano player is that kind of guy. He's the monkey wrench thrower, so it makes sense.
Yeah, you can do math, but just I mean, wind players tend to like playing in non-sharp keys.
Okay, gotcha.
And string players, because of the open strings, te like to play tend to like to generally play in sharp keys.
Okay,
So E is a sharp key. It's got the nice open string
yeah.
for the bass, but it just didn't really lay well on the wind instruments for what I wanted to do. So I put it in E flat, and he's like, "Dude, what are you doing to me here?" And we like to open with that piece, so he
Yeah,
doesn't even, he's got to be ready to go, and he
yeah.
he he does it, man. He does it.
So how did this journey begin? Take me back to where you were born and raised. How did music and jazz and being a copyist, how did all of those kind of evolve into who you are?
Okay, well, from San Francisco, um, not a musical family. I'm kind of the black sheep. But I'd always been attracted to it. And like I remember, well, my earlier influences were television,
Yeah,
but in the 60s you had people like Nelson Riddle and Billy May doing underscore for television shows.
yeah,
So that, I mean, theme from Green Hornet is on the album. It's not a coincidence. It's part of me. And I mean, we didn't play a lot of music in the house. I joke, my dad had like three Michel Legrand records and four Red Nichols records, and I took them and traded them for Rolling Stone records. And later reacquired them once I realized how wonderful those albums were. But in the house, we really didn't play music that much. So I got it from television. When we'd go to Candlestick Park to see the Giants, they used to have bands roaming the stands playing in between innings. And there was a Red Garter Dixieland band. San Francisco was a real Dixieland kind of destination in the 50s and 60s, so I'm told.
yeah,
So I was really attracted, not just to like the trumpet playing the melody, but I got off on the bass part, the tuba part, and just a little kid, but hey, there's some mechanics going on in there.
yeah,
And that kind of got me into it. And I mean, Bozo the Clown records, those were Billy May,
yeah,
so somehow I got really interested in that. I played trombone and low brass instruments in high school band. Our school really didn't have a jazz program. It was pretty into music theater, which got me into that vocabulary early. Not that I mean, it's my bread and butter as a copyist, Broadway shows, but I haven't played that many of them as a
yeah,
performer. I stopped playing seriously when I was about 31 and just devoted myself to writing. Um, Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. In San Francisco, I went to a small college in Northern California as an accounting major, and I hated it. One night I listened on headphones to the Grand Wazoo by Frank Zappa, and I was in a slightly altered state, and I couldn't believe music could be written like that.
yeah,
So I called my father the next day and said, I want to change my major. And he was cool about it. I was 2 years into college. He said, you've taken all these business prerequisites. If you switch now, it'll be a waste of 2 years of college. I'll let you add music as a second major, and you can take 5 years instead of four.
yeah,
So we did that. I switched from accounting to labor relations. And so that I got the business thing down. I got music. And then in San Francisco, I played in big bands for about 8 years before I left and moved to New York to go to graduate school to study composition. I realized that I really liked arranging. I wanted to be like the bass trombone player in a big band that wrote the charts. I was never really a jazz soloist,
yeah,
but I liked being in big bands. I liked being around jazz soloists. Um, and once I got to New York, I realized I was a good player, but I wasn't like New York great player. So I stopped and concentrated on writing. Um, I knew as an undergraduate that there was a thing called a music copyist, and I thought that might be something I could do. I was always good with music theory, and I understood all the mechanics and inner workings. So I taught myself how to do that. I got tutored by some professionals along the way. I started working as a copyist while I was in graduate school and kind of just went that way. I call it my 30-year sidetrack, but I'm good at it and I'm
yeah.
successful at it, and I don't want people to think I'm retiring from it.
But we all have side hustles. I mean, even in the realm of jazz, there's a lot of people that teach and then they
Sure.
also have careers. So, I mean, there's always something that's on the side, but at the end of the day,
Mhm.
how has been doing this, being a copyist for 3 decades?
Mhm.
How has that lent to you delivering the music and making the album that you made?
Well, I'm definitely approaching it from a different angle than most people that put out big band albums. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and this was just my way. But like, a lot of people that are writing for big band are great improvisers, have maybe had careers um, in teaching or at a university or just freelance jazz players. And maybe they put a project like this, like a big band album together from that experience. My experience has been 30 years of looking at scores every day and, 50 years of listening to records
Yeah,
and kind of imagining what I would want to do if I could have my own band and put out my own record.
yeah,
And what would I want to do? And, I didn't want to do a full big band. I mean, I have done that, but I didn't want to do it. I wanted to force the limitations on myself of 11 players and take what I've learned to make it try and sound like more than 11 players. That was a challenge I gave myself. And again, going back to being a music copyist on Broadway, when I started out, shows had 24 players, and now you're lucky if you get 18. So the good orchestrators have learned how to make a smaller ensemble sound bigger.
yeah.
And, I'm involved in looking at that every day and assisting in that. And I've learned a lot of tricks about that with, less is more sometimes, and combinations of instruments together can give you more than the sum of their parts and that sort of thing. So, um, from that career, I was able to learn a lot of craft. And, I've listened to jazz, since I was 15. Um, Big record collection, now CD collection. And I played with great jazz players. I understand what they're doing. I just wasn't very good at that myself. I kind of started late. I mean, it took
Yeah,
me until I was about 20 to realize, oh, this is how much these guys are practicing.
yeah,
There's the analogy of 10,000 hours, or in baseball, they'll say 10,000 ground balls.
yeah,
I maybe took 5,000 ground balls
yeah,
because I started late.
yeah,
But sometimes I feel like, I'm not Mickey Mantle here. I'm like the third string catcher that sat on the bench for 30 years and watched every play and observed and learned the game, and now is not Hall of Fame, but that person might end up in the Hall of Fame as a manager,
yeah.
something. So I kind of see my path maybe similar to that. I mean, it's not really up to me to decide, but um,
So, what are you ultimately hoping the listener gets from this album?
I want them to have as much fun listening to it as we had making it.
Yeah,
And about 25 years ago, I used to do these arrangements for a 14-piece group in New York City called the New York Fusion Ensemble. It was led by my friend Bill Warfield.
yeah,
And, he had the band. I supplied the charts. We did some mostly Led Zeppelin charts. We recorded an album that never got released. That's a long story. We did some Jimmy tunes, and we did a Weather Report concert. So we would play at a club once a month, and it was in a room off the bar where you had to get admission tickets. And one night we didn't have that many people paid, and we just said, open the door, let anybody in that wants to come in. And while the band was playing Stairway to Heaven, my arrangement of Stairway to Heaven, this drunk guy came in right at the orchestrated Jimmy Page guitar solo that I orchestrated for the band. And on this guy, the reaction this guy had stuck with me ever since. He was like, I can't believe what I'm hearing here. Oh my God, this is incredible. And here's a guy that probably has never experienced a big band, but he's heard Stairway to Heaven a million times.
yeah,
He's experiencing it in a new way. And that stuck with me. And I'm trying to give that to the listener too. I'm trying to give them something that they probably have heard. I mean, most of those songs were popular at, at least at some point. But I'm trying to give them a spin so the listener can experience something in a way they don't expect.
Yeah.
And maybe we get some big band fans out of it, or maybe we turn some people on to jazz.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you in different capacities. Family, friends, colleagues, people
Yeah.
that know you as a musician, as a copyist, but you run the show. What's your
Hmm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh my God, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And I've gone from the guy passing out parts on the music stand at rehearsals and recording sessions to a guy that found himself in a studio in front of a band wearing headphones in front of a band for the first time
Yeah.
after all that. So, um, maybe I'm the kind of person that's still surprising people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm surprising myself.
Yeah.
So, there's that, there's that.
So if anyone wants to pick up a copy that will benefit you the most, they want to catch you live,
Mhm.
anything else that's going on in your world, where's the best place to go?
Well, I have a website, russanixter.com.
Okay.
Okay, there's a store section in there. You can buy a download, you can buy a CD. I'm the one that puts it in the mail and sends it out, but I'm thrilled to be the distributor.
Yeah.
You can buy t-shirts. Also Bandcamp.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
This has been great, man. Russell, I appreciate it. I'm going to play another tune on the show, so I really appreciate you
Okay.
taking a minute out. It's a great story, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm honored. I've seen your roster of people on here, and I'm thrilled to be included.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's been great. I love it. I'm sitting. Hello, friends. Joe Domino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Domino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedomino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.